Good afternoon, Melissa. It's good to be back.
Hello, Julie.
Hi. I was thinking about this time of year and how January, by the time this airs, it'll be February, but January feels like it was 11 days. Like it's incredibly long. It was super cold in Ohio. It was tinged with sadness in my case. And I was remembering back to 5 kids trapped in the house, bored of the routine that we established in the fall and needing something different. And I started mulling over, like, what are the game changers in the momentum of homeschool? You know, off the top of your head, without revealing today's topic, what are some of the game changers you used when you needed to like inject some liveliness into the doldrums?
Okay, I love that question. Well, games was always like, okay, it's time for us to all get enthusiastic about a new game, or handcrafts, the kids baking. Not
Yeah.
me if I could help it.
Yeah.
And getting outside, like
Oh, yeah.
nature study
Yes.
is always a fix, or was always a fix when they were little. I'll say that, once they become teenagers, nature study isn't the magical cure-all that it was when they were tiny.
That's true. And actually, it is good to remember that getting outside, even in pretty cold weather, is a good antidote. I remember when I used to train for marathons, we would run in very, very freezing temperatures, single digits, teens. And just knowing that I was going to be outside a couple of days a week for a little while actually did help with weather. And that's true for all of us. Even if all you're doing is sending your teen outside to fill a bird feeder, just that cold slap of air can kind of reinvigorate a person's energy level. That's a good point.
It's true. I think because I encountered Charlotte Mason when I was a baby homeschooler, and her first book, Home Education, a lot of page space is dedicated to the children should go outside every day in all weathers.
That's right. And it was hours a day. They weren't like 15-minute walks. She's like, spend the afternoon in the pouring rain. And you're like, okay, Charlotte.
I definitely had some moments where I've got like a baby in the sling, two kids in the double stroller, and two like cold and grumpy, preschool age children going like, Charlotte Mason.
Yeah. Why are we outside? Well, that's right. I love that you started with games because indoors, the games are a huge break with, filling out worksheets. And that really is a nice segue into what I wanted to talk about today, because one of the secret weapons in your toolkit is one-on-one time with a child. And I know that some of you have very busy households. You've got 6, 8 children. I had 5. Melissa had 6. So it's not like it's natural. If you have 2 kids, you can be like, one watches TV and the other one has one-on-one time, and you feel like you'll get that done in 2 days. But if you've got a large group of kids, carving out those meaningful moments where it's just you and one other child can feel like you're taking away from the momentum of the whole group. But what I was hoping we could talk about today, Melissa, is how even the investment in one child reinvigorates the whole group. And what are some activities we can do one-on-one? And then what are some of the ways to keep track of who got that attention and what do you do with the other kids while you're trying to spend time alone? So how about you? Have you found that one-on-one time serves as sort of a re-injection in the learning experience?
Yes, it's almost to a magical degree sometimes. And actually, as you were talking about like different family sizes, it struck me that even if you only have 1 or 2 kids at home, I mean, here I am at a stage where I've got my second youngest has started taking college classes this year and then is still doing some homeschooling stuff with us other days of the week. And I've got my youngest is a 10th grader, right, at home. And even if you're only working with 1 kid or 2 kids, thinking in terms of how can we spend some meaningful one-on-one time is just enough of a brain shift to make you look at what you're doing together in a different way, so that even if you've been homeschooling one child for years, I think reframing it that way, like, oh, what can we do that's one on one, helps you see, like, break out of the routine of I'm giving this work and we're working through these projects, and yeah, you know what I mean? Like it
I
freshens up.
love what you mean. I feel like a lot of times the way that we think is we're a parent. I have this visual in my head of the parent standing over the child, the homeschooling parent. So you've got a child seated and an adult standing behind that child, pointing at something on the table, right? Fill in this page, copy this, do these activities, do this set of math problems. And there's this feeling of there's just the two of you, but it's not one-on-one time. One-on-one time to me is eye contact, like being at the same eye level as your child. So even if you're saying, oh, well, I, selected this child from all five and I gave them knitting to do, that's not the same as two people, you and the child, sitting at the same level on a couch, knitting together, talking about knitting or talking while you're knitting. So one-on-one time to me, the way to see it is it's egalitarian. It's a peer-oriented style of engagement where you're as curious as the child. Your job isn't to teach anything. It's not to explain anything. It's not to guide, lead, or direct anything. You are saying, I'm pushing a pause button on my
Yes.
role as the parent, and I'm going to join you as a peer.
That is so important. It's not a private seminar.
No.
They get the benefit of my private seminars all the time. This is not that.
That's right. This isn't your chance to secretly guide them in your values, right? Like I'm going to have one-on-one time so I can help you understand my viewpoint on dating or how to be honest, right? No, that's not
Right.
one-on-one time. One-on-one time, actually, another way to characterize it is that it feels good. It feels good. It feels good for both people.
Right.
It's not you doing something to your child, and it's not your child doing something to you either. Both people are engaged in an activity that feels satisfying to both of you.
Right. It's more like a play date.
It really is. Play date is a great way to put it. And in fact, one of the things that I thought about back when I was working more on this Brave Writer lifestyle, which is to say all the adjacent ancillary aspects of homeschooling that support the academic instruction. So, reading aloud supports reading, poetry tea time supports investigation of literature, free writing supports the practice of becoming a writer, right? These are lifestyle pieces, things that you can do, nature, art, building vocabulary and insight into what you observe. So in one-on-one time, I realized that is a part of the Brave Writer lifestyle. What we're doing is we're prioritizing creating community just between parent and child over some other aspect of learning. And the reason this is important to think about as part of your homeschool is that you will find out things about your child when you're simply in companionship with that child that you can't observe or notice when you're being their teacher and their parent.
That is really true.
Yeah,
companionship. There's another great word for us to hold in our minds when we're thinking about this.
Yes, I love that. Because what we're doing is we're putting ourselves in a posture where the walls are down and we're creating the possibility of both enjoyment and showing up as ourselves, as opposed to showing up in our roles, which is dutiful daughter and, authoritative parent, right? So just to give you an example, if you sit down and you start building Legos side by side with your 6-year-old son, and it's just the two of you, you're going to build a different Lego build than if you pull out the box that has the instructions and you're going to teach your child how to make, the Death Star. Now, some kids will really enjoy one-on-one time with you where you're supporting them in building the Death Star. I'm not saying that doesn't count. It really, really can. But the idea of what you're doing together has to kind of be sourced in the child, not sourced in what you think is good for the child. So building Legos with your 6-year-old can really be an example of one-on-one time. What's an example that you can think of off the top of your head?
Well, there was a point in time when my youngest daughter was about 6 years old, and her older siblings had started watching a TV show with my husband in the evenings. And she had this, and the two boys would like go to bed. So there's the 6-year-old alone in her room feeling really adrift. And I was right at that point in time. I had decided to lean in hard to trying to learn how to draw. And she loved any kind of arts and crafts. So every Saturday night from age 6 to she is now 18, and we are still doing it. We had
Wow.
art night. And we would get out, when she was little, when it started, we would just get out a whole bunch of art supplies and sit on my bed and draw or paint on my bed. Very colorful
Wow.
bedspread.
I bet.
That was the only space we had for it at that point in time. Through the years, we tried different types of art, or sometimes we took a class together online. There came a point when she was a teenager when we started watching Jane Austen movies and maybe not even doing art at all, but we still call it art night.
Oh,
We still do it. She's in college and she comes into my room every Saturday night. She could do whatever she wanted, and she chooses this to come, and she draws on her iPad. Sometimes I embroider. Sometimes I'm beat and I just kind of lie there and we talk.
that is so incredible. What an amazing example of how a practice like that lasts a lifetime. One of the things that I did with my kids, many of you know, is we watched birds in our backyard. And just this weekend, I was with my son Liam, who was the one who was the most invested in bird watching. And for Christmas, I bought him a bird feeder this year because he and his wife have a new house and they've just moved back to Cincinnati. And the three of us went bowling. Another great one-on-one thing to do with a kid, by the way. Take one child bowling. Oh my gosh, unbelievably fun. Anyway, we did that. And at the end of the bowling time, I said, by the way, I saw at the bird store that there is a list of hikes to go see birds. Is that something you'd like to do again, like what we did when you were young? And he said, oh my gosh, just send me the list. We'll just start picking out dates. Yes. And it is, I think it's interesting that you brought up your adult child because that immediately called to mind what happened just yesterday. I think when we establish early that a child is worthy of our full attention, doing an activity that is enjoyable, they associate that with their relationship with you. It's how they reconnect. It's how they remember their connection with you. I have a child who lives in California, and I just wrote her recently and said, now that my mom has passed, I have more time. I really want to come back out to LA. We can go, we love to eat out and walk on the beach and go shopping in Venice and do all that stuff. And she immediately said, please come soon. And one of the things that she told me, this is my youngest child, one time I was asking her a question like, would you have wanted to go X place with me? I didn't think she would, but I wondered. She said, Mom, when we were growing up, especially with 5 kids, time alone with one parent was premium. It was the most important experience that we could have. You and Dad a lot of times did stuff as a group, and that was fine, and we loved our siblings. But anytime either of you singled one of us out, it felt extremely important and extremely special. And so when we're talking about one-on-one time, you might think, oh, I don't have time to bake cookies or go on the walk with my child to walk the dog. We have to get through math. But here's the weird thing that happens. You take that walk one-on-one with your child and the dog, and they are so much more likely to want to do math.
It's true. It's true. The relationship is stronger. There's this almost like this secret bond, like you develop the same kind of inside lexicon and inside jokes and references that are so special to the two of you that it heightens the delight for both of you. And I think for that child, I mean, when I think about the daughter I was talking about with art night, if you think, okay, she was fifth of 6 children.
Mm.
The brother directly above her had all kinds of medical challenges and disabilities. So that's, a lot of my time and attention would go to him. And then 3 kids above that who were in the thick of homeschooling and activities, and then a 3-year-old brother. Like, that is a kid who easily, for me, could have had to scramble for moments of mommy
Yes.
time. And I didn't know when I was like, you know what? Why doesn't she just come in with me while you guys watch your show? I had no idea what it would become for both of us.
Oh, it's such a good point. And one of the things that a lot of parents say back to me is, I don't have time. I don't have time to schedule all of these dates. Here's how I solved it with 5 kids. You don't have to have one-on-one time every day or even every week with every child.
Right.
You just have to have it. So get out your calendar, schedule one, and then the next time you feel up for scheduling, pick a different child and make sure that you keep track so that you don't inadvertently fall into the pattern of one-on-one time with the child that is the most likely to want it, or the one that you have the most natural, sympathetic, relationship with, right? Because there's always some kid in your family who overlaps with your interests better or is a little bit easier hang,
Right. Temperamentally,
yeah, you
click.
just,
Right.
right. It's very easy to fall into that. And there's always a kid in your family who looks like a loner, and they really aren't, but they've adopted that as their family role, right? They take care of themselves. They seem good, independent. One of the ways to establish then this one-on-one time is to expand what you think it is. I remember back when our kids were young and I would listen to some of these parenting gurus and they would talk about going on dates with your kids. The word date is a little problematic for me, especially if it's like dad dating the daughter or mom dating the son. I like, why are we using that language? Wrong language. What I want to suggest is that you make a deliberate effort to know that it's an hour. It doesn't have to be 3 hours, but an hour. And it can be while you're driving in the car. Like, if you can leave the other 4 kids at home with a movie while you drive one child to piano lessons and you listen to their music in the car, that counts.
Right.
If you play just like a word game in the car with one child, that counts. Holding hands when you're taking the walk, here's a trick. Even if there are 4 other kids, if you pick one of the kids to hold hands with, you are creating a kind of one-on-one time, even in the midst of other kids being there. You're letting that person know, hey, I see you. I'm holding your hand. So look for opportunities for that child to feel singled out, to feel valued, and then keep track on your calendar so that you don't overdo it with one and accidentally overlook another.
One way that I solved it for quite a while when this was when I had 4 children, and so they were all quite young, right? And the baby was the medically fragile child. Every day after lunch, we would have 1 hour of quiet time. And quiet time meant that you were on your bed, or I would spread them out because they shared a room, right? So someone on my bed, someone on the couch, someone in the bedroom, and you could read, you could play quietly, you could listen to music, you could listen to like a story tape, and I would rotate. So 6 days a week we did this, and I would spend the hour with one child twice a week. So they each got an hour of my one-on-one time.
Nice.
2 times a week. And that was a really, really sweet time for us. I remember reading Old Yeller to my second daughter. So she would have been maybe, 7 years old at that point. And I remember thinking like, is it weird that I'm doing a read aloud with one kid?
It is not.
I
have done it.
Read alouds. How could I not maximize?
No, I absolutely did that. I read Emma aloud to Johanna when she was in 6th grade every night. It took us a year because it was a very long, hard book to read to a kid that age. And she was tired. So we could only last 10, 15 minutes before it was time to sleep. But no one else wanted to hear that book. She had watched the Gwyneth Paltrow movie and wanted to hear the book. So I read it to her. My son Liam really loved this one book called Ruggy. It was about a deer that lived in the mountains in California, and it had been given to him from his father's mother, so his grandma. And we read it more than once. He would get to the end and then want me to start it over. And we did it at bedtime, and it was just the two of us. Was I reading Emma and Ruggy at the same time? I was not. And that's the thing I'm trying to sort of
Right.
seed into your imagination is you don't have to do justice to this every day. Like you don't have to have 5 one-on-one times in a day. You don't have to read 5 books at bedtime simultaneously or
Right.
6 or
It's
8.
not possible.
It's not possible. But what you want to do is be intentional. And so that's why I think creating lists and reminding yourself in your calendar is helpful. And I have a little list here that I think is kind of fun to go over. There are some things that you can do no matter what the age is, like going out for ice cream, right? It doesn't matter if your kid is 17 or 7. They will always want to go get ice cream alone with a parent or whatever it is that is a snacky treat food. Same thing with movies. Doing a movie matinee with one child,
Right.
any age, that's always going to work. Taking a walk, playing cards, talking in the car, hugs. I liked that you said sitting on the bed talking. For a lot of kids, that is the best one-on-one time you can even create. It's
Right.
the feeling of safety and being able to talk in the dark. And you might have to rotate. It might be Monday night is for one child and Wednesday nights for another, and you rotate. And not all one-on-one time has to be with you. If you have 2 parents in the home,
That's
the
right.
other parent can be doing this as well. We do not want all the burden on you. What are some other ideas that you have, Melissa, for
I
one-on-one?
loved hearing your list just now because I was looking at my list and there's so much crossover, but also some things pop up. So music. So this is one that my husband, like this is a real special thing with him. Scott he's so knowledgeable about music and they love just sitting and listening to an album together. Coffee shops, definitely anytime I have
yes.
ever taken any of my kid to any place to eat by themselves, that is considered as special as it gets. I keep meaning to start doing ramen dates because I think ramen is so fantastic because it's a single purpose kind or focus activity. Like you can't be on your phone and eat ramen at the same time.
No.
You need
That's
both hands.
amazing.
And so I love that for conversation. And also for us handwork, I'm a better listener if I can embroider while you're talking to me. And then I can listen to you and let you tell me about what you're thinking of or what you're interested in, or explain to me a thing that I didn't know about the thing. And I do remember, Julie, one point when one of my children and I, our favorite way to spend like 20 minutes in the morning was to lie on the couch together and scroll through silly like Instagram reels of pets, of cats and dogs. And that was like such special time.
That is so adorable. You know, I think sometimes we overvalue talking and we undervalue sharing an experience. So another example of that for me would be indoor rock climbing. I've done that with 2 different kids. And so you're belaying each other and you're testing your physical strength. Going skiing together, you have the one-on-one time in the chairlift and then you ski down separately. These are right. Like it's interesting to think about that. Miniature golfing where you both have this goal and you're keeping track, but there's also an activity to do, just like bowling that I mentioned earlier. So don't forget about like the traditional sport activities, because seeing you be bad at a sport is amazing for kids.
Oh, for sure.
Love it.
I mean, that seeing you be bad at anything, I
Yes.
think is wonderful for kids. That was
Yes.
definitely the case with those art dates that I talked about.
Yes.
She saw me trying so hard and drawing came much more naturally to her. So even though she was 6 years old and I was however old I was at the time, we were really quite on the same level.
Yes. Happy 25 years to Brave Writer. Did you know that in January of 2000, I launched my company with a writing class? That's right. I think we may be the very first online homeschool class ever in the homeschool business space. When we launched this writing class, we had to use an email list. I didn't even have a website yet. Here we are 25 years later, and what we've learned over those years is that the best writing instruction has a few key properties. First, it is limited to one goal over a short burst of time. In other words, we aren't just endlessly working on a project. We have 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks where we dedicate ourselves to one format or one concept in writing. Secondly, it's great if you've got a group of families, a group of students working together so that we can read each other's writing and learn from one another. Third, all the feedback from the instructor is public in that group. That means each student can learn from what another student is getting out of the class. The teacher feedback is widespread and it normalizes comments from a reader. And finally, our classes are not interested in making sure that your kids are prepared for year-end testing or grades. Instead, our goal is to give your child the confidence and the competence to actually care about writing so that when they do year-end testing, they don't feel nervous about hitting a standard. They feel confident about expressing themselves. We've discovered, because we've been at it for so long, that our students leave our program feeling ready to be writers rather than ready to rely on tools like AI and ChatGPT. If you think teaching writing is a challenge, sign up for one of our classes with your kids. We seek to educate you, not just your child, so that the two of you can become an editing and writing team. I would love you to learn more. Go to bravewriter.com/online-classes or visit the link in our show notes. And there's another thing too about the nighttime that I don't want us to overlook because we get really tired, but especially with teenagers, being willing to stay up late and watch a movie like after everybody's in bed, doing something at midnight, doing something way past bedtime once in a while, that just imbues the relationship with a feeling of a specialness, right? Like,
Right.
oh, we stayed up to watch X movie at 11. I think I've shared this before, but I want to share it again. I have a friend, dear homeschool friend, whose son got interested in stand-up comedy when he was like a sophomore in high school. And he was watching like the late night guys, the people who really use a lot of raunchy humor. And that really wasn't her family culture. But I remember her saying that she knew she would either lose him to that world and never have access to it, or she could like watch and laugh with him and even understand like what level of humor and sexuality he was hearing about. And interestingly enough, she said that she just fell in love with stand-up comedy because hello, it's funny. And then they started, it became like their inside thing. And today he is still at Second City in Chicago in his mid to late 30s. Like it became
Wow.
not his career, but his passion. He has a job, but this is what he does as a passion. And she has access to it because she was a part of it when he was young.
Oh, that's beautiful. You've made me realize there's another type of one-on-one connection that happens sometimes after a group activity. So we might all watch a movie together, or 3 or 4 people of my family watch a movie together, but it will often be just 1 or 2 kids who want to talk about it and debrief after, right?
Yes.
And that conversation might go on for a while. It's spontaneous. That's not one-on-one time that you've scheduled, but being open to it happening in the space after the group activity.
Yes.
And recognizing that some people like they have the activity and they want to go away, and other people, for them, the debrief is the fun of it.
1,000%. Oh my gosh.
Hello,
I mean,
it's me.
I was going to say, yes. Also, our families are so similar, right? Like we love to analyze things. I mean, it's my boyfriend laughs about it because that's not his natural bent to sit there and re-examine every aspect of the movie within an inch of its life. But that's
Right.
definitely our family of origin culture, and my kids definitely value that. And you can do some of this even, with teenagers through text messaging if they have their own phones. Sometimes one-on-one can just feel like you thought about their interest, found an article, and you sent it to them. And then at the end of it, you say, when you've read it, come find me. I have to talk to you about X. Right. And so that feeling that their opinion about X is essential to you is another version of one-on-one time.
Yes. And you're right. That happens all the time. And now that a couple of my kids don't live at home, and you probably run into this a lot,
Yes.
Julie, sometimes what that means is my version of one-on-one attention to them is that when they're ready to talk about the thing that we shared from a distance,
Yes.
I am tuned into the conversation and having it in real time.
1,000%.
Right? I'm
Yes.
there to text with them in that moment.
That's right. Or take their phone call and make sure everything else is turned off and you're just listening, right? Like that's
Right.
also a big thing for me. When we think about one-on-one time, I want to also not just talk about what you can do, but why this helps the homeschool. And here's my take on it after raising 5 kids and, having now grandchildren. One-on-one time lets the child know that you're actually interested in them as a person, not as a project.
Mm.
And so if you create goodwill, humor, camaraderie around an activity that doesn't have any academic goal or any academic outcome, when you do put before them an academic project of some kind, you have built a little bit of trust and you've made an investment in that account. And they sort of think of you as a person who wouldn't willfully give them unhappy things to do. Like a lot of people have said to me, oh, my kids won't do free writing. They hate copy work. They're not interested in dictation. Why were your kids open to it? Because in our household, again and again and again, I demonstrated that their experience of life mattered to me. Their
Right.
happiness was super high on my priority list. I wanted them to feel like they were leading great lives, not just getting a great education. And so if the feedback was, this isn't working for me, my brain was, how can we tweak it? How can we fix it? How can we support it? How can we enrich it? And I learned how to enrich things through one-on-one time because I got to know who my kids were. Oh, she benefits from a snack. He needs a little extra time. She works better at night. He needs to do things in the morning. He likes to gamify things. This guy
Right.
likes to be left alone to get it done quickly. Like, that's when you learn that stuff. You don't learn it as much during homeschool. You learn it by being in a relationship with them. And then you can actually take what you learn and apply it to making their homeschool lives as rich and meaningful as you can.
That's right. And that's the difference between whatever great relationship a child who goes to school may have with a teacher at school is different than the relationship that child has with their parents, because of that whole person picture that's being taken into account. It strikes me that another way that you cultivate this awareness is by listening to their offers. I don't know that I would have thought about it like this before this conversation, Julie, but one of my adult daughters who lives, in town nearby, she has frequently offered to come over and help me clean out, work in the basement, like go through some of the boxes from when we moved. And for Christmas, she gave me a stack of coupons, offering her services to do that. And whenever we are down there working together, it hits me all over again. Right. Some of our best times as mother and daughter, or as person and person connecting, are when we're working together on a project that we're both invested in like that, but it's also low stakes.
Yes.
It's not about me. It's not about her. It's really about spending the time together and feeling that like special connection. And that she knows that of my 6 children, she's the one best equipped to engage with me in this way. So it's almost like a flipping, like she's found the best way to spend one-on-one time with me, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
No, of course it does. That's exactly right. And I think sometimes, in an effort to be the best parent we can be, we do a lot of scripting instead of taking advantage of opportunities as they present themselves. Kids who feel forced into one-on-one time do not enjoy it. So if you're like, okay, I'm going on 5 dates this week, and the first one is with, this child, and the second one's with this child, they might just feel like they're on a checklist that you're trying to chug through, right?
Right,
But
right.
if you are being responsive to who the child is, you notice that the dog needs a walk and one of the kids likes the dog the best, and 4 of the kids are watching TV and there's a 5th one on the computer, and you say to the one on the computer, "Going to take the dog for a walk. Would you want to come with me? I'd love to get some time with you." You have a better chance. But if
Right.
it's, well, every day this week, I'm taking a different child to walk the dog, it starts to sound like they're fulfilling your agenda instead of you creating connection.
Right. You've made it into, it feels like an obligation, perhaps, like
Yeah.
you feel obliged to do it. You've just reminded me that to this day, it astounds me how enthusiastic the response is whenever my husband says, "I'm going to the grocery store. Anybody want to come?"
Oh,
And he
wow.
will only ever take one person. That's the deal. So
Wow.
they spread it around. But that's it. They love that one-on-one time. It struck me that at a certain point in our marriage, he said that a huge light bulb went off for him about me because I guess he grew up in a say what you want family, and I grew up in a hint for what you want family. And people from those families have to understand that those are different cultures. He said a light bulb went off for him the day he realized that anytime I say, do you want to go for a walk? What I'm really saying is, I want to go for a walk with you.
Oh, wow.
And when he had that revelation, I started listening for all the ways that people in my life say to me, "Do you want to do the thing?"
Oh,
And thinking about, oh, wait, are they saying, "I want to do the thing with you"?
I love that.
So
Gosh.
when a 4-year-old says, "Do you want to play Star Wars?" Or when a 12-year-old says, "Do you want to play whatever, Fortnite, whatever game they're into,"
Yeah.
right? Or when my 21-year-old son says, "Do you want to see what pictures the Bird Buddy camera caught?" Those are all a way of saying, "I want to do this with you."
That's
The sooner the
so
better.
good. Oh my gosh. That is so, so good. It's so important. It's so important.
It's
And
offered as an
honestly,
invitation
yes. And
to
it's, but
give
it's,
you the chance to say yes or no, right? Like there's that dynamic in play where
well, the reason I like it is because sometimes we misread our kids.
yes.
Kids, it's risky to ask a parent to do something because parents typically say no. They just do. They're like busy. No, sorry, I'm making dinner. No, sorry, I got to pick up so and so from the piano lesson. No, I'm working on the taxes. Like that's, and you don't say no. If I were to ask you, do you say no a lot to your kids? You would say that you didn't because you feel like you say yes all the time. Yes, you can have the ice cream cone. Yes, you can watch the movie. You feel like you're a yes machine, but the no's that we say are often about time. They're
Right.
often about time. We don't typically say no as easily to like a snack, but if it's going to mean you have to sit on the floor eye level with a 4-year-old to play with dolls, it takes a little bit of like, oh God, I got to do it. That is just
Yeah,
not on your list of things that you would choose to do for yourself. So
that's right.
when you make those choices, just know that you are doing like the highest good. Somebody said to me the other day, "Why did you like having babies so much?" I found babies so difficult. They were so demanding. I felt like I lost myself. And I said, the reason I loved having newborns, like newborn till about 3 months old, those first 3 months, the reason I loved it so much, the reason I had five, would have had more, is because during those 3 months, anything I did with that baby was the most important thing that needed to be done. It instantly streamlined my life. I
Right.
could opt out of everything. If that baby was fussy, sorry, there's no dinner, no clean clothes. I'm holding the baby. This is the most important thing there is to do right now. The complication emerges as that child gets older and you start feeling like you can take time away from the baby to do the other things. And by the time that child is 5, 6, 7, you are starved for doing other things because you have been holding the baby for years. So
Right.
it's understandable that your first inclination isn't, oh, I want to sit on the floor and play with the dolls, which is why I recommend keeping a calendar log so that you can be like, I have said no to this poor child a lot lately. I am going to say yes the next time they say, do you want to play cards? Or can I make muffins with you right now? Or I want to take the dog for a walk. And what they really mean is you hold the leash and they walk with you. Like you can start to be on the alert because the no's start to take over the more your child is independent of you. But
Right.
that's the time that you've got to prioritize it at least once in a while.
There have been times in my life as a mother when I have made like little check marks in my planner on the calendar.
Totally. That's what I do.
In different colors, right? To see if like, oh gosh, there hasn't been a green check mark in a while. Like that's a
it.
kid who could really use some connection time with me.
I used to even write down eye contact because I started to notice that I look over everybody's head. I'm like constantly talking about something beyond them. It's like, go get your shoes, get ready for Target. We're about to eat dinner. Go sit on the couch. And my eyes are like looking over the head to the world beyond them. And one day I was like, I don't even know what color my children's eyes are. It has been so long since I just looked in their eyes with a pleasant expression at the same height. I dated a guy years ago when I first became single after being divorced. And I was determined to date people who had some emotional health and who had some ability for self-awareness. And so on one of the dates, I said to the guy, have you ever worked on yourself? This really blunt statement. I'm like, have you thought about like how to be a healthy person? Is that like a part of your life? He goes, we were at his house. He goes, hold on, I'll be right back. He goes to his refrigerator, comes back with a list of his principles for living that he had cultivated after his divorce. Okay. I was like, wow, this guy is pretty intentional. And the number one item on his list, I will never forget. And it was, when interacting with a child, get down to eye level.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. He put that tops on his list.
That was his number one on his list of self-aware things to do to be a healthy person. I've never forgotten it. And I think that is one way to really think about what we mean by one-on-one time.
Right.
Get down to their eye level. Do
That's
the thing.
right. That's right. Oh, Julie, it makes me want to go grab one of my kids.
Gotta go.
Actually, I had great one-on-one time with my youngest this morning. We had been talking about marine biology and like the zones of ocean depth. And before I knew it, he had a measuring tape out and he was measuring like floor to ceiling in our dining room where we do everything. And we were trying to calculate, like, if we were going to put painter's tape on the wall to mark off the 5 different zones of the ocean, like how deep into the basement would the lowest one go? And it was spontaneous, but I was present for it.
There
right?
you go.
I didn't end the moment because I knew that I was going to come up here and record a podcast about one-on-one time, which would have been the height of irony. But I have done ironic things like that in my past.
Well, I think that is the perfect way to close this out. I think everybody listening right now is already thinking of that one neglected child and something that they could do. And so I really hope that's what you take from this message today, that one-on-one time is not a luxury. It's the essential ingredient that fuels the entire project. If your homeschool is trending towards slogging through and burnout, let all that go and reinvest in that relationship with your child. Spend some time that is not about the academics, but that is all about eye contact. And just see how that changes the dynamic going forward. I really believe it will.
Great topic, Julie.
Thanks, Melissa. You've been listening to the Brave Writer Podcast. I'm Julie Bogart, and Melissa Wiley is my co-host. This podcast is produced by Nova Media with support from team member Jeanette Hall. Thank you for listening and for leaving either a starred or written review on the podcast app of your choice. Anytime you do that, you bring a lot of joy to the team and you support our work. So thanks in advance.